Horn of Africa and West Africa. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this public debate on Somalia. And to address the topic of today, Somalia after elections, what now? We have a panel with 3 members. We have the main guest coming this morning straight from Mogadishu, the UN Secretary General's Special Representative, Michael Keating. He's the head of the UN in Mogadishu. He has a long background from the UN, different posts, serving in many countries, dealing with countries in transition, peace and reconciliation, humanitarian assistance, and so on. And he has also a long academic background, so I think he's a very good person to address today's topic, and we look forward to interesting discussions. So we'll give the floor to him first, and then we will move over to a representative from the Somalia diaspora in Oslo, Mrs. Lul Kulia. Very happy to have you among us. And then lastly, we'll also hand over to Jens Mjøgedal, who is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He may be known to many of you. He is the special representative from Norway to Somalia, and he has traveled extensively to Somalia. And after a short round of introductions, we will open for debate and dialogue with you. And we hope to have a very fruitful interaction this afternoon. We have set aside 1.5 hours, so time should be available. Now, why did we choose to focus on Somalia? And why did we organize this meeting? I think this is a very interesting time. In Somalia, there's been a long election process. You probably followed very closely. There is now a new parliament, there's a new president, there's a new prime minister. So we are interested to learn more about how does the situation look like? What challenges will this new government be challenged with, and how do we think the new government will respond to all these challenges? Of course, the government itself has not been appointed yet. That will take maybe 2 more weeks. But we will ask this question to Michael Keating, because you come straight from Mogadishu and you've been interacting with the President and the Prime Minister. So I give the floor to you first.
Thank you very much. And first, let me begin by thanking you for organising this, and thank you all so much for coming. And I'm very keen to benefit from your advice and your views about Somalia, because I'm sure you have a very interesting perspective from here. I have to say I'm deeply disappointed, because I was looking forward to seeing Somalis in the snow, and there's no snow. I was going to take lots of pictures of Somalis throwing snowballs at each other, but that's not going to happen this time. So, but I mean, the first thing to say to all of you as Somalis is congratulations, because you know what's happened in the last couple of months. I hope you agree, has really defied expectations. If 1 year ago people had thought that we would have a new parliament of the kind that we do have, with which is much younger, 25% female, I think it's more educated than the last parliament, and as the result of genuine electoral competition, even though there were many problems, as you know, there were stories of intimidation and corruption and so on, but nevertheless, this parliament is generally seen, at least from what I can tell, within Somalia, as being much more legitimate than any parliament for a very long time. And I think, I don't know how many of you were there during the elections? Well, you were there during the elections. I mean, I went to 4 or 5 of the voting stations. I went to Kismayo, and Baidoa, and Mogadishu, and so on. And seeing the elections was very exciting, because unless you're in Somaliland, people have not experienced voting with all the cameras and all the electoral officials and so on for a very long time. So, secondly, I think the presidential election, from what I can tell, went much better than most people thought was possible, both in terms of the way it was conducted. I think the ad hoc committee that organised it did well, and the result was quite remarkable. And now, as Elizabeth said, there's the business of forming a government, the appointment of a Norwegian diaspora member as the Prime Minister. It is extraordinary that there are now 2 Norwegian Prime Ministers in the world, not just one, right? And that the Speaker is also a Norwegian. That's great. So Norwegian influence is very, very strong. The other thing that we shouldn't forget is that it was only back in October 2016 that the last federal member state came into being, Keating. Is any of you from Keating? Any of you from that part of the world? No? No one here from Johar or from Belatwain or Bulaberte? Yes. Were you surprised?
Of course.
You were. So that's pretty significant that, you know, the state has finally been formed. And of course there are views about whether state formation should have come before conflict resolution and reconciliation. But the good news is we now have 6 federal member states. The challenge, of course, is the status of Mogadishu next. And there are many local conflicts to resolve around the country in places like Galkayo and Dusamareb and Gedo and Solensanag and Lower Shabelle. And there's also the issue of how to come to terms with Al-Shabaab. Your question, Elizabeth, is what now? And, you know, it's really up to Somalis, not the international community, to decide what the priorities are. And this new president and the Prime Minister, they're pretty preoccupied by forming a government, but they're already on record as to saying what they think the priorities are now. And of course the first priority for both of them is responding to the drought. And I have to say it's very impressive, the leadership they have shown. The President convened a round table on drought response about 2 weeks ago. He got business people, he got faith leaders, he got security people, he got the international community, he got NGOs, he got everybody in a room and said, right, we are going to do this together, and you have the full support of the new government. Now, maybe that seems normal to you, but I'm telling you, there are a number of places where there are drought going on in Africa where you don't have that kind of political leadership. Look at South Sudan. Look at Nigeria. It is really impressive. So that's the first priority. The second priority, he has, I mean, I can't speak for him, but this is my interpretation of what he's saying, is that it is really important to have reconciliation among all Somalis. That, you know, he has set himself a very ambitious objective, which is to remove Al-Shabaab as a violent threat to Somalis and to Somali civilians. And he is saying that that needs a multi-pronged approach. It's not just a military thing, it's also about looking at fighting corruption, it's about paying the security forces, it's about providing services like health and education and justice, because it's the absence of those services which is contributing to the credibility or the appeal of Al-Shabaab. It's also about jobs and giving young people things to do. So that's another priority for him. And that leads to a third priority, which is he wants nationally owned security forces in Somalia. Like many of you, I suspect, you're wondering, you know, how long can the African Union stay? I haven't been to any diaspora meeting at which I'm not asked, well, why is the international community giving so much money to, you know, Uganda and Burundi and Ethiopia and Djibouti and so on? Why isn't the money going through the Somali security forces? Why isn't it going through the Somali army, the Somali police, the Somali maritime? Well, his answer and our answer would be, is because they are too disorganized at the moment. And Somalis have not yet agreed the basis upon which the army will be formed and the basis upon which the police will be formed. And this is a political problem. So that's a very high priority for him, is to reach a political understanding among all Somalis, federal member states, clan elders, business sector, as to how that security will be formed. And that leads to a fourth objective, which is how you're going to pay for it. And he is giving very high priority to the idea that the private sector and the state must reach an agreement as to how Somalia can generate the resources to pay its way in the world. You know, there's something, as he says, shameful for him that he has to go to the international community to beg for money to pay the police. When you have a very big business sector, telecoms, money transfer, trade, livestock, no one's paying any taxes. How many of you in this room don't pay taxes in Norway? None of you. Good. You'd probably be in trouble. If I asked the question of a similar group of this size in Mogadishu, and people were being honest, and I said, how many of you don't pay taxes? You know what would happen? Everybody would put their hands up. No one pays taxes. So why do you pay taxes here and you don't pay taxes in Somalia? I mean, you're not there, but so when the president is trying to say to the private sector, guys, you have to pay taxes, because otherwise we're going to be, as a country, just dependent upon the outside world. How are we going to pay for health? How are we going to pay for education? How are we going to pay for police? How are we going to pay for anything? And the business people are saying, well, why should we pay taxes? Corruption. There's bribery. We don't know where the money goes. We don't know, it's not resulting in things that we need as business people to function. So there's a very important conversation he wants to have there, which is about strengthening the ability of Somalia to pay its own way. And that's a very important part of being a functional state. So, one last priority that he's talked about, and which many of you may also consider to be a priority, is getting to one person, one vote by 2020. A lot of Somalis, and I'd like to know if you agree, feel that really if Somalia is going to graduate politically, we have to get to the stage where every Somali has a vote. This last electoral process, for many, was a disappointment because it wasn't one person, one vote. But, it was impossible to have one person, one vote. How many of you vote in Norway? How many of you vote here? Okay, so you know what voting involves. You have to have a voter registry. You have to have an ID card. You have to have a voting system. You have to have a court system. If there's a dispute, you have to have security. You don't have to worry whether you're going to be killed on the way to the voting booth. And it was not possible to have it in 2016, which is why we ended up with this limit thing. Security situation, there's no really functional court system, there's no voter registry, there's no ID system. So in a way, the aspiration to have one person, one vote in 2020, in my mind, is a wonderful one. Because to get there, so many things have to happen. It means that we have to have an ID system probably. We have to have a voter registration system. We have to strengthen the court system. We have to improve our security. We have to pay the soldiers. We have to pay the police. We have to have an anti-corruption commission. So it sounds like a simple objective, one person, one vote. But to get there, a lot needs to happen. So, Elizabeth, your question, what now? My understanding, as I say, it's early days because the government hasn't been formed. And by the way, what the President and the new Prime Minister both said is that their priorities need to be discussed with the new government. They can't just do it on their own. And that the new Parliament also needs to be involved in this. I can't end without saying that I'm really hoping there's going to be an evolution of the political culture. You know, whenever I've been somewhere where an MP has won, including lady MPs, I say to the winning politician, so great, you're an MP now, you're a politician. What's your agenda? And they look at me and they haven't thought about that, most of them, because they've been so busy trying to get to become an MP and deal with all the clan politics and figure out where the money is and how they're going to pay people off, that they haven't actually thought about, well, what are we actually going to do? And I have to say, women tend to be thinking more than men about what the agenda is. Because, frankly, women are more practical than men. And the women are thinking about, you know, health. They're thinking about education. They're thinking about, whereas the men are, I mean, by the way, some women are even stronger than the men on the clan stuff, but on balance, women tend to be thinking about the issues, whereas men tend to be thinking about the power politics and how they can survive and all the rest of it. So what I'm hoping is that now that we've got a more legitimate parliament, and we've got a president and a prime minister, not everybody loves them, but who are considered to be really good news for the country, that we can move down an agenda. And one of the things that I'm doing here in Oslo with Jens, the special envoy, and Elizabeth and other colleagues who are Somalia champions, is to say, you know, there's an opportunity in Somalia now. There's a big opportunity. And the diaspora has a huge role to play. Not just financial in terms of responding to the drought and so on, even though that's incredibly important. But you can lend your voices and lend your knowledge to try to support this political project. So I'd be very interested in your views. First of all, whether you agree with anything I've said, and secondly, what you think you can do in addition to drought response that will help Somalia, you know, continue to take advantage of this positive development over the last few months. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Yes, let us give I see some nodding faces, so I think some are agreeing with you, but we'll hear later. Let us now move over to representative from the diaspora. Lulkumia, how do you see the opportunities, and especially also opportunities for women?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, thank you for including me in this panel. As you say, like I have also been, first time got the opportunity to be a lot of places in Somalia, Kismayo, Baydhabo, Jowhar, Hargeisa, Garowe, and first time because I'm one of the Somali gender equity movement. And what we did, the women we have worked with after the election, what we did was me and who are the spokesperson and our chairperson are to travel to meet women in the country, in many places, who worked with us to say thank you and let us united and work together instead. And SGEM, maybe many of you don't know Somali Gender Equity Movement. SGEM seeks to achieve equitable power sharing and gender mainstreaming, and to create and sustain Somali women's movement domestically and internationally, dedicated to promote social and political equity in the public decision-making area. The movement comprises of diverse mass of Somali women inside the country and in the diaspora, and now we are almost 9,000 women who are members SGEM. But the question you asked is, Somalia after it is recent election, where now? I think this is a big question, and there can be many suggestions. I would like to think about it. What next? In other words, what are some important critical areas of action for the new leadership to focus on and take concrete steps? And many you have already mentioned it. I would suggest that, in my opinion, there are 4 critical areas to be addressed. The first one, of course, is the drought and humanitarian crisis. The second is security. The third is finding a way to reduce corruption. And the fourth is justice, encompassing, of course, gender equality and peace building. Let me say a few words about these critical areas for the present Farmajo's government, and to start security. In the context of Somalia, security is a huge priority for obvious reasons. So the new administration needs to address security strategically. Most important is to protect community and their property, starting with Mogadishu. As we know, Mogadishu was a city, everyone was there. Which clan? It wasn't a question. And after the civil war, everyone go back to their heritage, not their city or their place, but their forefathers or their heritage. So there is many properties which is not belongs to the people who has today. And security sector institutions such as the Somali National Army, Somali National Police Force, and the robust Somali Security Intelligence Agency are very important. So the new administration will need to strategically develop solid Somali security institutions that can provide protection for the people and their property. Of course, the new government will need the help of its international community partners such as Norway, UNISOM, AMISOM, and EU to build these national security institutions. And like you say, it don't need to be forever. This is to start to help. And the Somalis, they must take that further. And when it comes to corruption is another major priority for the new president and his team to effectively address. As an immediate first step, they have to pay salaries for the security, because when you don't pay the security, how can they take care of you? How can they be strong enough to take care of the security? They have family and they don't get the food they need to have energy enough to do their roles. And establishing credible and transparent way of collecting revenues and managing public funds, so the people can begin to trust the system. Because the system, if you can't trust the system, how can I pay the money? Because I don't want to give money to a man or a woman so they can just be rich, you know. Justice and peace building. We all know that Somalia's problems stem from past injustice that lead to these protracted conflicts. So in my opinion, establishing a fully functional justice system and beginning to build peace through comprehensive reconciliation are critical steps to take in the next 4 years. Farmajo and his team will have to make sure that there is a solid foundation for Somali national justice system that is independent and accessible by all. Ensuring gender equity from beginning is also very important and need to address it at every level of public service. You mentioned election, one person, one vote, about if we come there, about 4 years. I think if the situation will be as it is today, no women will get voted. No. So this administration needs to include women every service so they can do their jobs, so the society, the people can know what assets women are. So when we come 2020, then there is no doubt and they will get the vote. And comprehensive reconciliation on multiple level, community, regional, and national level, and ongoing peace building initiatives is important to do. Demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration of ex-combatants are required, so the new government will have to develop such initiatives. And when it comes to the humanitarian crisis, I think this is an area that the new government needs to engage the Somali diaspora communities. As you mentioned, yes, the president did a good job to work with the committee and the society in Somalia, but in diaspora, they are just doing what they can, but nobody is organizing that. And it may be smarter to try and coordinate diaspora assistance building on the momentum that Niger has from Somalis all over the world. There are many diaspora communities who are actively organizing and collecting resources for the drought victims. Here, the new government can provide leadership in making these initiatives more coherent. Let me give you an example of the Norway Somali Community Initiative. The community has organized an event where they are supporting the new president and his prime minister. In this event, they have collected funds to drought victims, and the resource collection is still ongoing until March 25. We have decided to send the money to the National Drought Coordination Committee, and this is only Norway example. It is really important to see how generous these communities are and how willing they are. And now I want to say something about this in Norwegian. Pardon me. And jeg ønsker å fortelle dere alle at somalere er samlet og engasjert og organiserer en samlingsaksjon som er landsdekkende. Vi skal ha bøssebaring den 25. mars. Og alle som kan stille opp, de kan ta kontakt med meg når vi er ferdige her. Jeg vil også be myndighetene i Norge til å spleise med oss og bli med dette fellesskapet. Jeg vil også appellere til de hjelpeorganisasjonene som er til stede. Jeg vil først ta til Flyktninghjelpen, IME og flere andre som har allerede stilt opp med bøsser, så vi kan låne i stedet for å kjøpe, for å samle penger på og bruke. Det er unødvendig. Dere andre som er til stede, hvis dere har bøsser som dere kan låne, ta kontakt med meg når vi er ferdige. Takk.
Thank you very much. Thank you for expressing the priorities for the new government in Somalia as you see it, and also for your engagement in the Somali diaspora in Norway to also respond to the humanitarian crisis. Very interesting. Now, let's move on to the third person in the panel, Jens Mjøgedal. We are very interested in hearing your comments to the situation. Jens.
Thank you. Very good afternoon. There is not so much more to say. I think I have said most of it, so I can agree with them. Let me comment on a few things and say that Norway, as I'm representing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, we will continue to have Somalia as a focus country, and we will have a long-term involvement in Somalia. We have to bear in mind that Somalia is still the same as it was before the election. All the problems was before the election, and they are now. We met with the Prime Minister and the President, and we think that they are a blessing for the country. We believe that they represent a new initiative, and they will be able to establish a professional government, and we believe they have the best intention, and it's very promising that the Prime Minister and the President has been so clear when it comes to corruption. Corruption was an issue during the election, but looking back now and see on the result, we have to say that the result was quite impressive. It was a surprise to all of us that this president was elected and the prime minister. And the way there was the transfer of the power from one president to another was an example for so many other African countries in the midst of a very, very complicated situation. And imagine that this election has been a failure. It would have been a tremendous setback for the government, for the Somali people. It would have tremendous setback for the process that has taken place now over the last 4 years, and it will be a gift for the Al-Shabaab. So the success of the election are quite remarkable, and of course, as Michael said, it will also be a stepping stone for having a free and fair election with one person, one vote in 2020. There's a lot of work to do before that. So we all should see that this is turning a page in Somali history, and there is a possibility now to develop and strengthen the development of the positive trends that has taken place. And there are positive things that has happened. There is, for me, a better understanding at least among the elite people in Somalia of the necessity of a more nationalistic approach, that there is one Somalia. There is not only the different states and the different entities. There is something they have in common, and they has to find the recipe for how to deal with the center and periphery. If they don't do that, this will be impossible. And I tell you, we were working on something called Oil for Development, and the first issue that we came on the table when we met with the Somali delegation in Nairobi in October last year was, of course, the revenue sharing issue. That if they find oil outside Puntland, should it all be for Puntland? Of course, you can't build a state like that. It's the same as the question of taxation. You can't have a free ride and develop a state. You have to contribute, and of course that is a major issue, and we don't have an answer. But the President and the Prime Minister have addressed them, and we believe that there are possibilities. And they also have to improve their relationship to the civilian population. Of course, they have to deliver some of the basic services, because there is no way that the government can survive on the top of Villa Somalia without having a relevance out in the villages and outside the airport of Mogadishu. So there is a lot of, and the same issue as we were discussing 1 year ago, they are on the table today. But there is a political improvement, and there is a political legitimacy that is absolutely necessary. And one of the key issues on the table today is, of course, the security, the corruption issue, and first of all, as it is today, the response to the drought. The drought response in 2011, 2012 was too little too late. And of course, it was a disaster with 260,000 people killed or died out of hunger and starvation. We are in a better position today, and this is about the reputation of the international community and their ability to respond. And it's the same for the government and the people in power today. If they don't manage to respond in a way that the people see that they are responding in the best possible way, there will always be shortages of funding and so on. But if they don't solve in this immediate situation the question of corruption, and that comes into the drought response, misuse of money or lack of involvement from the politicians, that will undermine what has been achieved through the election. So they have the two men that is now in charge in the federal government, and soon there will be in a week or two a new full cabinet. They have a lot of their plates on the short run and in the long run. We will do our best to stand by that side, but it will, whether we like it, or there is always this issue where you can say, and that's always on the agenda, that you can accuse the international community. The development of Somalia is basically a responsibility for Somalis living in Somalia, with the support from diaspora and with the best possible support that Michael is working hard on making the organizational structure for the international community better, but it comes back that it is a responsibility for the Somalis themselves, and we have to support those initiatives as much and vigorous as we can, and we will continue with that. And today, you know that even in the worst possible situation where you have a drought situation, Somalia is also competing for funding and attention from so many other humanitarian crises. And I think that there will be a response to Somalia also based on the fact that you have developed from a complete anarchy over so many years and into a kind of a development process where you try to do the best, where they try to do the best for establishing the security apparatus and for political stabilization. So to summarize, Norway will do our best to respond in a way that we can strengthen the processes that is already taking place in Somalia, together with Somali counterparts and together with the UN and together with other relevant parties. And we have been there for quite some years, and we will continue that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we have listened to all members of the panel. Now we shift the focus over to you. And now we are interested in hearing comments or questions to members of the panel. When you get the microphone, I would like you to say loudly your name and, if relevant, also the organization you may be working for, so that we know.
And how much tax you have paid.
Okay, we'll start from the window in the corner there.
Yes, so do. Good afternoon. My name is Abdi Magan. I'm a member of the Somali community here in Norway. I welcome you and thank you for your effort in taking part of finding solution to our problem in Somalia. I want to talk one thing. To be honest, our problem are not only one problem. We have so many problems. But the problem is some of them are more important than the others. Security is #1 priority. So what I want to focus is that we have a mission, United Nations backed mission called AMISOM in our country. And the reason why AMISOM was brought to Somalia was to help the Somali people, Somali National Army, to help bring security and stabilization to our country. It's now their 10th year in Somalia. And even though some towns and areas are liberated from Al-Shabaab, insecurity issues is still there. Attacks are carried out. People are killed. Towns, even though some of the towns are liberated, there's no access between the towns, as Al-Shabaab has a strategy to cut off one area from the other. So my point is that I believe we have come to the point where a strategy, direction, is to be changed, whereby the local forces are built and prepared for them to face the challenge of Al-Shabaab, as we have the mission of AMISOM lagging behind and not meeting the needs of our people. So what I need, as you were talking about Somalia, you said there's no platform from which we can help the security, the national security, as people live in their political views in different states and different situations. What I want to say is that there's a general belief by all the Somali people, including me, which is Mogadishu is the most important town in Somalia, the capital city, where we have the largest people, where it's like the head of the country. You need to stabilize and bring security to Mogadishu with the first priority. we believe if Mogadishu is stabilized and local forces are empowered, given the necessary tools and equipment to meet the need, the rest of the country will follow in suit, and we will have, with the grace of Allah, Somalia all in peace and stability. So what I am emphasizing is that we put our thought, as I represent our people here, to take the message with you back to the country, talk to the authorities, and try to help us change the direction and empower the local forces so that they can bring the peace and stability that we yearn so long, and our country will be in peace, and we will also help, we'll make the effort ourselves to be part of the effort our government is doing with the international community support. That's my point. Thank you so much.
We continue because there was another person. We'll take 3 interventions and then we will have a response.
Thank you very much. My name is Bashar Musa. I'm a member of the Norwegian Somali community in Norway. I'm a politician and I'm a member of the Norwegian Oslo City Council. I would like, first of all, to thank you that the Norwegian Foreign Affairs has facilitated these events in order that we can share this information and exchange in our country. And I'm proud really to see that we are very proud that Hassan Kaire, one of our community, he became a prime minister. That's a great opportunity for us as well. My question really is that we know that after the transition, the Somali Republic has changed to the Federal Republic. Has the international community accepted this reality? What I'm saying that when I really see the things, speak with the people, discuss with the people, we talk about the external factors and internal factors of the Somali problems. So some of us are not really quite sure whether the international community accepted this reality, even though the most of Somali's diaspora or other places, they questioned that. So I would like to emphasize that the Somali diaspora, particularly in Norway, really the most of them are ready to rebuild the country, to contribute the country, to be a one, even though we have challenged to be organized and get, the community, but we will try our best. And I think the drought will be a very interesting thing, a big thing. So what I would like to ask that the role of international community, and especially how they accepted Somalia as a federal government. Is it a reality for you, or is not a reality? So I think that's what I would like to emphasize, and I would like to add that it's very important that in our Somali people, Somali community, we have to support in our government whenever it is necessary. So I think we will do our best to contribute in every level. As a politician, I would like to contribute, how to reach, in my area, how to reach the fair and free election. I think it's very important that we do have more than maybe 10 or 15 Somali politicians in Norway with a different level. So that area should be very interesting. So we need some how to coordinate and how to make it reality. But I think coordination will be very important. So finally, I would like to thank you very much for the Norwegian Foreign Affairs, and thank you very much, Michael, having you here, because it's the first time and it's an opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then we'll take the third one here. Next round we will go from the back and upwards. I know it's you.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. We thank first, as was said, to the Norwegian Foreign Ministry event, and then I thank you for coming here and being involved in Somalia. What I want to comment is actually the UN's role. As we know, the UN is not new in Somalia. In 1950s, it was actually involved there in the transition time, and it showed good results in 10 years with the Italian administration. It showed trained thousands of semi-professionals and professionals and put a state system in place, which took over in 1960. But I have a feeling that the UN's role in the later time, for the last 20 years or so, it was not that effective as before. I remember when James John was there in 1991, and then the UN was there always with all other donors. Well, I have feeling that the UN is not so effective as before, and in other places. As we know, many other countries, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cambodia, Mozambique, all other countries, Rwanda, they were stabilized, and they are developing now. So why Somalia is challenged? Why Somalia is different is the question we all can ask. Well, I believe then, if we don't say that Somalis are special kind of human beings, I could say that the involvement of the international community is not well targeted. I suspect that. Or another factor can be the Somali leadership was not using the resources they were getting. Well, either ways, we can say that Somalis are a special kind of human beings because everywhere else in the world they behave like other human beings. So the strategy and the approach which the UN and other international agencies use it, that I question. How much they are honest in Somalia, and then their approach, do they actually want to get to results? That I have many doubts in. If the reason was Somali leadership, well, we can argue that, but now at least we have, as you say, leadership which is nationalist and humanist and professional to some extent and legitimate to a large extent. So now, what I would suggest to Mr. Keating especially is this. Please, sir, you tried very hard and you did well, and I thank you for that, but it is now or never. This regime, this new government should be supported strategically and with focus on results. The results are most important for us in all these areas, especially state capacity building. That is because corruption, why not reform? So I feel that all representatives of the international community are not honest in one thing, or many things, but one, they don't tell the truth to the Somalis. I guess when you go to Galkayo, you are diplomatic. When you go to Kismayo, you are diplomatic. But this is a human problem. And then if people are dying, to be diplomatic, I don't think it makes difference for those who are going to die. So please, ask them for results. What do you do? Mr. Formaggio, what do you do for your people? Mr. Kaire, what do you do? Where are the results? We paid you so and so thousands of millions of dollars. Where are the results? So that's what we want. When you go to leaders, state leaders in the regions, tell them the truth. Mr. Ahmed Madara, why outside the Kismayo? What's happening outside the Kismayo? Do you know what's happening there to women and children and elderly and people there? Do you know? So be honest and tell them the truth. And that's what I feel is when there was problem in Kenya in 2007, first, the international community put its weight on their 40 high senior officials were there, including Kofi Annan. And then I guess they told the Kenyans the truth. Don't behave stupidly because we don't tolerate that. In 91, when Ethiopia collapsed, I think in the Western countries, especially tell them the truth. Do behave humanely and behave responsibly. That's what they told, I guess. I think that the Somalis are not hearing that, and they should hear that, because that's what makes a difference for us in the end. It's very stupid to pay billions in Somalia for the last quarter of a century, and there is no results there. So, I know Mr. Jens was involved with that in 50 years at least. Now, his friend is Prime Minister. If he could claim before there's corrupt leaders, now there is his friend there. So let us see what they do together with our taxes, Norwegian money, and his friend there, and he there with experience. Let us see what they do. We want to resolve this. We don't want it. We are not children here to play, gentlemen and ladies. Okay? Thank you.
We have got three very important questions. Now I'm looking at the panel. Who wants to start? Everybody's relying on Michael in the middle.
Okay, so I'll start. Shall I take them in the order? I mean, Amazon is there on a UN mandate to do many things, one of which is to strengthen Somali national security forces. I think your idea of stabilizing Mogadishu first is a very interesting one. Whether the rest will follow, probably, but there are many other disputes around the country that also need to be addressed. It's funny, you know, I spent a lot of time in Galkayo trying to help the local community, the mayors, the governors, the two state presidents, the business community, women, resolve that dispute. And they say, you know, if we can resolve the dispute in Galkayo, the rest of the country will follow. I got to Hargeisa and talked to the politicians there. They say, you know, if we can solve the dispute between Hargeisa and Mogadishu, the rest of the country will follow. And everybody has this view that whatever dispute they're in, all the kind of complexity of Somalia comes together. But I think you are right. Mogadishu is very special because, as you were saying, you know, it used to be everybody's city. It belonged to everybody. And there is a view that that character is being lost. Land has changed hands. There's been a lot of illegal stuff going on. The kind of people who live there has also changed. And maybe working on Mogadishu is definitely a very sensible first thing to do, including what is the status of Mogadishu. That's not even clear. I mean, that became apparent in the electoral process. So I accept your advice. In terms of empowering local security forces, the problem in Mogadishu is that security has been largely privatized. You have private security forces, you have neighborhood security forces, you have Somali National Army, you have, I mean, you probably know there have been studies on how security works in Mogadishu, and it's very, very complicated. No one has a monopoly of the use of force in Mogadishu. It's very, very fragmented. And I'm not, maybe by sorting that out in Mogadishu, the rest of the country will follow. I'm not 100% sure. I think we have to have a nationwide agreement on security forces, not just Mogadishu. But I take your point. I mean, if you go down to Kismayo and talk to you know, someone like Madobe, Ahmed Madobe, he won't say sort it out in Mogadishu and all our problems here are resolved. He will say we have our own problems which we also need to address. So I think you're right about prioritizing Mogadishu, but I wouldn't say that everything else will then be sorted out. Actually, one of the problems is that many people around the country feel that Mogadishu takes up too much oxygen and that not enough attention is given to other parts of the country. Has the international community accepted the federal reality? I would say, on the whole, yes, politically. Certainly, the donors have, the ones with the country, with the money, the development assistance. But we are still seeing behavior by many states as if the federal state does not exist. In other words, that they can go into any part of the country and cut a deal on training or on ports or on livestock as if there isn't a federal structure. And this is because they're used to 10, 20, 30 years of lack of law and order, lack of structures, lack of government, and there's been the sense that you can do. Sorry, I should be looking at the person who asked the question. It was, yeah, you can do whatever you want. And, for example, right now, there's a lot of discussion about the port in Berbera, maybe a deal in Bosaso, maybe a port north of Mogadishu, maybe something happening down in Kismayo, and all these involve foreign countries. And of course, President Farmajo is probably saying, I don't know if he is, but he's saying, well, wait a minute, you know, if we're supposed to be a federal country, you can't just, it's like if, I don't know, China came in and started negotiating with Bergen for, you know, I don't know, a military academy, and didn't tell Oslo. You know, I don't know how Oslo would take that.
Bergen is always saying they're not Norwegians.
So that's a bit of a bad example.
Prime Minister will get angry.
But so, you know, if your question is, have people really accepted the notion that a federal country, you have a central government as well as federal state government? And one of the reasons why people are not behaving correctly is that the Somalis haven't themselves figured out how it should work. You know, because at the moment, if, let's say, I'm making this up, Chile wanted to build a port somewhere in Puntland would say, yeah, come on over, we can have talks, no, go tell those guys in Mogadishu to go away, we'll fix something. Well, Mogadishu is not going to like that. There isn't an agreement right now as to what is the relationship between the federal member states and the federal government on so many things, including international relations, including resources and revenues. So at a certain point, the international community will be responding to what the Somalis themselves agree should be the way the federal state works. And it is not clear. That's why this constitutional review is so important. It really is very important. Should Puntland, should Galkayo, should Mogadishu have the right to raise taxes? And, you know, regardless of the federal state, I mean, can you raise taxes for garbage collection? Can you raise taxes for lighting? Can you raise, you know, this hasn't been decided. It has not been decided how the states, I mean, how's it working here in Norway? Presumably there are municipal taxes, there are county taxes, there are federal, none of this stuff has been agreed. And that's the problem. Until some of this stuff is agreed, you can't expect everyone to behave correctly. Because what is correct? What is constitutionally correct? And of course, we're seeing it in Somaliland right now with the port of Berbera and these stories about the UAE wanting to establish a military base. And everybody's saying, well, wait a minute, you know, what's going on? I mean, is this legal? And no one's quite sure. So there has to be an agreement among the Somalis as to what the federal reality is, and then it's going to be much easier. I think what is important for the international community is not to contribute to the fragmentation of Somalia into 6 separate states. On the other hand, what we've learned, I think, or what the Somalis are saying, is if you have a state that is over-centralized, that won't work either. So we have to find the balance. And this is what federal states are about everywhere in the world. It's finding the balance between the centre and devolution of power. And that's the conversation that needs to take place. In terms of the UN role, thank you for your views. I would say, you know, I've only been there 15 months. And I get 2 types of criticism, broadly speaking. One is, the UN's not doing enough. Where's the UN? Why isn't the UN doing more? And then I'll go to the next meeting and everyone says, the UN's interfering. Why are you getting so involved? Why don't you stay out of the way? We leave it to the Somalis. And so whatever we do, we get criticised. You know. So it's sometimes very difficult. And I could tell you all the things the UN is doing. I mean, the number of times I've gone around the country, I promise you, I'm not making this up. I will go to Adado, and I'll have a room full of 300 people. And
people will get up, especially the women, and they'll say, why is the UN helping Puntland and Jubaland and they're doing nothing for us? And then I go down to Garaway and they say, why are you doing everything in Hirshabelle and Galmadug? You're doing nothing for us. And so I now travel around the country with information about what we're doing. Every animal in the country has been vaccinated by the UN. Every child in the country has been vaccinated by the UN. All the civil servants are being trained by the UN. You know, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I could give you a long, long list. A lot of things are invisible. You know, for example, the electoral process, we were very, very heavily involved, but we tried to remain low profile because we didn't want to, you know, be seen as interfering. But if you talk to the federal indirect elections implementation team, you know, we trained them, we helped them with their communication, we supported the goodwill ambassadors, we did a lot. And maybe we're not very good at communicating it. So I obviously would be quite defensive of what the UN is doing. I haven't done a study on whether we're doing more now than we were doing 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago. But I would agree very strongly with two things you said. First of all, poorly targeted international community support. I agree. I do not think that the international community has been as coherent in the way it supports Somalia as it needs to be. And I think that's partly because each country has its own agenda and each organization has its own agenda. But it's also because the Somalis, until now, have not really been clear on what their priorities are. You know, you can't expect people to be coherent in the way they support you unless you know what you want. Unless everybody else agrees with you, you know. And so there's that thing. The second thing I would agree with you, I think, you know, what you were saying is, to what degree does this depend upon the Somalis themselves rather than the international community? And I think Jens has said it very well. What's exciting about President Farmajo and Hassan Khairi, and I hope more than just them, is the sense that Somalis are going to assume responsibility for their own problems. Not say, where's the UN? And why is Amazon doing this? These are our problems. You know, no one else is going to fix them. Other people can help us, but we're going to fix them. And the example I think I gave you is that he's trying to pay salaries for police and soldiers. This month, this week, he has to do it again next month. At the moment, he has to come to people like me to ask how he's going to get the money. And he said, I don't want to do this. Why can't Somalis pay their taxes? This is our problem. We have to fix it. Anyway. So I think that's what's politically powerful about what's going on now. And of course, Somalia does need help. No one doubts that. And let me just end by saying that in the drought response, I think one of the most inspiring things for me is that what the Somali leadership is saying is we need international support. But they're not just saying we need international support. They're saying we are going to contribute our own money. We're going to, 50% of the fees of all the presidential candidates went to drought response. The business community is coming together to provide money. There's a lot of money being raised, even within Somalia. And even though there are some rich business people, Somalia is still a very, very poor place. And even if that money is very modest, it's very powerful that the idea that the first place you look for support is with your neighbours and with your own people in your own community. And that gives Norway and all the other countries that are willing to help a much stronger sense of a partnership rather than just coming in and, do you know what I mean, and making this a sort of international responsibility.
Thank you, Michael. I will give Jens and...
Let me just add a few things from discussion with the Somali politician, and that they are repeating more or less all the time. For Norway and for the international community, there is only one Somalia. There is only one recognized Somalia. How that will be in the future, that's up to discussions and negotiation between Somaliland and the federal government. But for us, there is one Somalia, and anything else would be involving ourselves in domestic politics. The other thing is that there's always this issue of UN. And besides what Michael is saying, UN is to a large extent also the entry point for Somalia and for Somalian politicians to the international community. So take good care of it and develop it and be very clear of what we expect. But understand that that is an issue. That is the presence, there is no presence like the UN presence in Somalia, and not only in Mogadishu. So that is something that, and there is a third issue that always comes up where Somali politicians or individuals are accusing the international community not for doing this or that. As long as Somalia is divided as it is today and has been, and that is what we hope will improve, you will not be able to fully utilize the international support. You will be manipulated, you will be under the different agendas, and so on. When you are more united politically with a vision of where you want Somalia to develop, then you will fully be able to utilize international support in a much better way.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to take the last question, some of it first, because it was something telling the truth. That's important, but who should do that? We Somalis, we need to tell ourselves the truth. What are we doing? What we have experienced? Because we didn't have true reconciliation yet. We are traumatized, some of us. And then you have, I have really been many places in Somalia, and people can think that clan and that clan and that clan, they don't meet or they don't go together. That's just not true. Really, this is politics. It is about research, and it is everyone trying to get enough so they effectively use the politic. And the ordinary people, they don't have that access. They think this is clan. So they are manipulated of other who are telling they are leaders for us. So we Somalis, that we need to go inside our heart, our mind, our history, and see what the situation we are today. And then tell the truth to us. Because if the Somalis, they don't do what they really wanted, and they just collect the money from others, and their children is dying, that's shameful. And we will never come forward. So that question was like really hard for me, those sentences. And the other thing is responsible. Who is responsible for Somalia? Somalis. But they are not today. For everyone is so busy what others do. Everyone is so busy what others get. What we need is to really think about the life we want for next generation. Men or women, whoever you are, go to your mind and think about the life you will put in behind. Really, that's what the only one I want to say.
Thank you. Now I have a problem because I see 20 hands and we have 15 minutes left. So I will have to move from the front row. I will have to go in the back. And I remember a man sitting next to the window with a pen. So I'll go to you first. And then there is one with the red jumper who has also been asking for the floor. Second. So if you will allow most people to speak, please be very short. We've had some discussion, so don't repeat. be very, very short, then we will allow more people to speak.
Thank you. My name is Sigat Abdul, representing Foreign Welfare Association. First, I thank the arrangers and those who invited us to take part in this meeting today. At the same time, the panel, I thank you come here and we get this situation that we feel about Somalia, the situation, and I'm very happy, especially Michael is here today, because and we can ask what we feel and what we have in mind. And really, I have some questions that I ask always myself. The one is, AMISOM is 30,000, almost 30,000 military force, and the Somali SNA is almost 30,000. And when Kenyan army, which I really supported, and I'm from that area, and I was take part to a conscript to fight Al-Shabaab, I was very happy that AMISOM to come and liberate us, the fascist fanatics of Al-Shabaab, and we welcome them, and we thank with that. The United Nations role, and the AU, and all international communities. But 10 years is a little bit too much. 10 years without having any state in Somalia, any institution. We have no any police functioning, we have no any courts functioning, and there's 10 years, and we did not achieve anything. I hope that Somalia had a police functioning and the courts and the system coming back. The other thing is that Al-Shabaab was defeated smoothly and easy. They were very easy to eradicate the fanatics from Somalia altogether. I don't know why the international community and the AMISOM stopped their operation against Al-Shabaab, and that they let them stay this small area we know together from the middle, the lower Shabelle, and the lower Juba and the ghetto, this area. Why we don't finish that business? Why don't we finish this terrorist once and for all from Somali territory, so that we can, the other things can be done? That's one question. The other question is, why the international community discriminate the Somali National Army? The international community give his salary to the AMISOM almost $1,000 each soldier, while Somali military who dies and are in the front and sacrifice for his country, he get nothing. He's not paid almost 3 months without getting anything. That's why they are not fighting properly with Al-Shabaab. Why international community don't be fair with that? That's two questions I asked, and I want to comment small. I want to comment about women in Somalia. Somali women were always free. They were not oppressed in Somalia. Somalia was a communist regime before. The women were taking part in all parts of Somalia. They were teachers, they were professors, they were singers, they were all part of Somalia. So Somali women's role is not beginning today. They were there all the time. And it's not something new. I think we are not from the Middle Eastern where women are oppressed. So all Somali women know they are free and they can choose. Only those who are weak will not choose. Thank you very much.
And the next one in the red jumper.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Keating and Ioannis, and thanks, Lord. I thank you for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts with you, how Somalia will be in the coming future. I don't know where to start. I've got a lot of questions here, but I don't know which one I'll take. But I will ask a question, Mr. Ioannis. You talk about taxation, and how Somalia manage if they are, divided into states. If they, for example, you have taken an example of Puntland. Let me ask you a question about Scotland and UK. How do you manage the battle? Are Scottish people and British people better than Somalis?
Do you think that Somalis can do that? That's my question first. Let me come to Mr. Keating. You talk about stabilization of Somalia, and you said Somalis are not coherent about what they want. Have you ever read the history of Somalia? I'll just challenge with you. Just go back and read I'm Lewis about pastoral democracy. Then you will find out how are the Somalis. We are capable to, to understand our problem and fix it. But we didn't get the chance, we didn't get the opportunity. Whenever Somalis come together, there are other people coming into there and discussing with them. I'm a national community. I'm not just saying that you are not doing anything. But if I come to my question, that was a little bit comments, but if I come to my question, I would like to ask you, what do you mean fragmentation of Somalia in 6 countries? What do you mean that? Can you just define the word fragmentation in the context of the Somali society? And that's it.
Thank you. And there's 1 minute.
That's the
last question. Thank you. My name is Mohammed. I'm 25 years old. And my question is, what can the international community and the new Somali government do for the youth? That's my question.
And the very last one will be the man with the jacket in the back there.
Thank you very much. It's a comment and maybe a couple of questions. We're talking about Somalia holistically, and we say Somalia is one parcel, but that's not the case. I'm a Somalilander, Canadian Somalilander, and we have had 6 in Somaliland. We had 3 presidents, 2 of them came to election. We had 2 municipality elections, 2 parliamentary elections, and we have had no piracy whatsoever, no terrorists whatsoever. We united with Somalia in 1960 as a 2 entity. We withdraw from that union, and when it comes to the international community, we were endeavoring to become part of international community and become an independent state. But we are not often spoken of as in the same press as Somalia, because everything is Somalia. As you said, you are one package. You put all your eggs in one package, and you're telling us, I don't know whether it's condescendingly or very arrogantly, you say, okay, you behave this way, and then later on you decide what you want. That's putting us in a disadvantageous position. You rather say now, talk to each other before we go any further. But if you're telling us, well, international community see you as part of Somalia, which we are not, actually. In the Western world, in Europe, 369 years ago, 1648, you have Westphalian international agreement about sovereignty. Each nation can have their own sovereign status. Why are you imposing this on us? I mean, when I'm talking international community, why is this? Imagine if Norway in 1905, when you gained your independence, if the roles were reversed and were very powerful in Africa, and tell you, well, you're Swedish and Norwegian are almost the same, you speak the same language, you're from same religion, stick with them. You can't have your own king. Isn't that preposterous? So my question is, we have been separated from Somalia for the past 25 years. When Siad Barre left, when he collapsed, the debt for Somalia was 1.2 billion. But now, according to some documents, Somalia owes $6 billion multilaterally or bilaterally to the foreign creditors. And we separate ourselves from Somalia. We're not in the equation. Does that mean I'm liable to pay that money? Because you consider me as one of the package. I believe the West should sit back and let Somalis do their own things. From Somaliland's perspective, it was from bottom to top, from the grassroots. Now, the only one who was against us, the only group, Khartoum and Ali Khalifa, are coming and we have dialogue and we're talking, and hopefully we'll sort out our differences. But in Somalia now, it's like, what do you call it? Buntustan, or Bantustan, or Bunland, Jubaland. I hate to be presumptuous, but it's only Somalia and Somaliland. We're two entities. You should come back to that and be fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry that the time is running out. I think we only have time now for response from the panel. I see we could have stayed here all evening because there are 20 more people who want to speak. But now we've heard from the first row, we've heard from the back. So we will start maybe with Jens, and then Kulmiya, and then we end up with Michael. Jens.
The question of what can we do for young people in Somalia is a very essential question. What we have tried to do as Norway will have no general impact on the situation for young people in the country, but we have spent a substantial part of our development budget of establishing job creation programs in Mogadishu and other. And that should be done on a much larger scale, of course, because everyone agrees that there is a need to give an opportunity to young people for a variety of reasons, radicalization, but first of all that they can have a life that give a perspective where they can stay in Somalia and expect that they can get married, get a house, everything. That is a long wait before we can see the end result of that, because we have a very, very young population in Somalia, and I don't know if it makes any sense, but we are saying that maybe 70% youth unemployment. So it is a time bomb, and it is an issue, and it has to be addressed by the new federal government as soon as they can breathe a little bit more when the drought situation is over and so on. And it should be a much more a focus on development aid and activities. I agree with you, but I don't have an answer. To the question of Somaliland, I don't have much more to say, because I wish you all the best to establish an independent state in Somaliland. But that's all. For Norway, it will be very strange if we say we are recognizing as the only country in the world the independence of Somaliland. This has to be a part of a settlement between Mogadishu and Hargeisa, and before you can reach that, at least you have to have a good relationship so you can have talks, and probably better talks than what you have had in Turkey. But you have to sit with the people, and hopefully when a minister from Hargeisa has been in Mogadishu to discuss, he should be welcome back to Hargeisa and not with demonstrations. You need an environment where you can address this issue, and you will not be saved by the international community. They will come together and they will say, yes, we will support an independent Somaliland. This is, and this has been the same for a long time. Taxation was a question, and I don't know if I can answer it, but I can say that you are. There has been very positive reports when it comes to the seismic from international company and possible oil outside the coast of Somalia, and that was what I referred to when I have discussed. that natural resource can be a blessing for the country, or it can be a curse, as some of your neighbors have experienced. If you want to develop your natural resources, you have to come to an agreement between the central part of the country and the periphery, between Kismayo and Mogadishu, or between others. And it cannot, you cannot see a future where all the resources eventually in the sea offshore should go to only the part to that part of the country. The landlocked part of the country, of course, has to benefit if you want to build a nation. If not, you will insert a lot more conflict into the political situation in the country. And that is certainly nothing that we need for the time being, more conflict over these resources. And this is something that comes to us as international. When we discussed it, no, they don't have an agreement when it comes to revenue sharing. And for the same reason, when we had this program of oil for development, Somaliland didn't want to participate because they want to have their own national program in Somaliland, and we can't do that. Okay, this is how it is, but we are experiencing these kind of issues all the time. We try to be balanced, and we try to answer it with some insight and with some restraints, and not being one-sided. But these are complicated issues, but more for Somali politicians than anyone else to solve.
Thank you. Then a final comment from Lul here.
Thank you. Many of the questions were specific to my co-audience. So I will take the comment made by brother, I don't remember your name. Thank you. You say Somali women were free. Are they not now? They were free, and they are free, and they will be free. And what we are talking about when we are talking of gender equity is the opportunity to everyone to get the opportunity to represent and help and take position in the government, in the society, in everywhere, in the leadership. Because, as you know, from 1960, women and men, everyone was nomadic. The government was first came to us from 54, and from there, women and men, they come to the city, and they get education, and they were equal to opportunity. But when 1991, the civil war started, what happened? And what is the situation today? What you are saying they were, that's true. When you think of the opportunity and to share the choices, yes, they were. But after 1991, women are outside the opportunity. And if you see the educational, women is the top. When you say percentage, men and women, in the diaspora, in the country, and everywhere, they don't have the right to represent their people. They don't have the right to help the challenges we are facing. I think we need to think when we are dividing women the way we are doing. Thank you. You are trying to divide me, but you are not.
This was the last word.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I will be very brief.
His program is tight. So
very brief. I mean, on Somaliland, the only thing I would add to what Jens has said is that I think the election of President Farmajo is also an opportunity, because he's very open to the idea of a respectful dialogue with Somaliland. I mean, he's made that very clear. And so, there was actually some celebration in Hargeisa, as you know, when he won. So, he's a reconciler. So this is an opportunity, just to at least move the conversation forward, wherever it's going to end up. Have I read Somali history? Probably not enough, but I've certainly read Lewis, and I've read many books on Somalia. By the way, I grew up in Somalia for a few years as
as a kid. I remember Somalia in the 1970s. I went back there in the 1990s. I've seen it in many different stages of its evolution. Now, Lewis talks about nomadic society and the pastoral economy and all the rest of it, and that's, you know, really very inspiring, but it ain't the basis for a state in the 21st century. You know, there's got to be more than that if Somalia is to make its way in the world. Amazon. Yes, 10 years, what did you say, 10 years is enough. I mean, I think Amazon agrees, the Somalis agree, I don't think anyone disagrees. The question is, what do you do about it? So, I think what most people agree, including the Somalis, including the federal government and the federal member states, is if Amazon just left overnight, it would be a disaster. Because they, no matter how much you like them or don't like them, they have been essential to protecting the cities, essential to protecting the electoral process. They've done a good job in clearing Al-Shabaab out of many urban areas. The fact is that Al-Shabaab has changed, it's changed tactics, and Amazon is not necessarily resourced and equipped sufficiently to play that role, and maybe it shouldn't play that role. Maybe that's what the Somalis should do. And I go back, I'm afraid, to the point I made earlier, is that there hasn't been an opportunity, but I think there is one now, for there to be an agreement among Somalis, excuse me, as to the basis upon which the Somali army will be formed. I mean, frankly, the SNA is largely from one clan, and within that clan, it's largely from one sub-clan. It is not a completely nationally owned army. Unfortunately, when the SNA went down to America, a lot of people in America didn't say, oh, it's wonderful, the army's come to save us. They said, who are these guys? And they're threatening us. Well, can you imagine if the Norwegian army, if there was problems up in Trondheim, and they got up there, and everyone that said Trondheim said, these guys are just a bunch of people from Oslo. We don't want them here in Trondheim. You need an army that belongs to everybody. And for the army to belong to everybody, everybody's got to be accept the basis upon which people are recruited, the basis upon which they're paid, the basis upon which the officer class is run. There has to be a political agreement among Somalis on the size, the accountability, the leadership, the funding of the army. And I think we're getting very close to that, by the way. And it's the same with the police. So I really like what you said about Somalis taking, you know, they've got to be in the front line of all this stuff. And the good news is, it's now much more possible today than it was 5, 10, or 15 years ago. So there's a real opportunity, and I hope that we will seize it. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone in the panel. Thank you to everyone who came and asked questions.
Thank you.
ما بحير. شو